If I want to compare two different noises with the question which one is louder and how much louder is it, what analysis should I use? The classic sound pressure level in dBA, or I directly use the loudness? What actually is the difference between these two analyses? I give examples for frequency resolution, time response, the scaling and the masking effects. And then you will know which analysis works best for your applications. So stay tuned. To get started, an example from the industry. Aeroplanes which are too loud have to pay an extra fee for each takeoff they made. This rule should motivate the manufacturers of aeroplanes to build quieter aeroplanes. Like always, I recommend to use proper headphones so you can follow my explanations. So I have measurements from two different aeroplanes, both time a binaural recording with an artificial head. Play back the first one. And now to compare it with the second aeroplane. Okay, this was louder. There are big differences in aeroplanes. But the question is, how much louder was the second aeroplane? 3 times louder, 4 times louder? Difficult to guess. So we use analysis and we can read out the values. So I picked the analysis level versus time, weighting, and as a comparison loudness versus time, and check them side by side. Here on top we see level analysis. The first aeroplane A, 58 decibel, and the second one 78 decibel. That's why I like this example. The second aeroplane is 20 decibel louder than the other one. What is 20 decibel? It's difficult to handle because decibel is a logarithmic scaling and it's not very handy. So the people use rule of thumbs to work with decibels. At least 1 decibel higher means, yes, there is a difference, I can hear it. 3 decibel means, yes, this is definitely louder than the other one. It's a clear, markable difference. 10 decibel, well, this means, well, that is almost double as loud. It's a rule of thumb, it's not exactly 10, no. It's depending on the frequency and whatever. But a rule of thumb, 10 decibel appears to be double as loud. And 20 decibel, then you are out. Well, you can calculate. 20 decibel, that means the sound power is 100 times bigger than the softer aeroplanes. 100 times? Can't be. 100 of the more silent aeroplanes can be in the sky instead of one of the other one. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't fit. Okay, so let's check the other analysis. I play the second one again. First aeroplane and second. And here we see this is a loudness of 13 and the second aeroplane has 48, which is almost 4 times as loud. And this is the first big advantage of loudness. It's a linear scaling. Double the value means double as loud. 3 times louder, you get 3 times value. It helps a lot to communicate how much better or worse is the other noise in comparison. It is human. But this is one of the smallest differences within these two analyses. Let's start with the different kind of weightings. What actually is this weighting? Let's have a look in the history how this has been created. People have discovered that there's a difference between what a microphone is measuring and what people do hear. Okay, we evaluate frequency in a different way. So the first people were, I guess it was Fletcher and Munson in 1933. This was a time when still horses were on the streets. It was a long time ago. They play back a sinus tone in 1 kilohertz at 40 decibel and then play back another tone, maybe 500 hertz. And the people who listen to this file can change within potentiometer the loudness or the volume of the second tone. So it can adapt so the 500 Hz has exactly the same loudness appearance to humans like the 1 kilohertz tone. And to 250 Hz. And they found out for lower frequency and even for higher frequency, we need higher volumes to have the appearance of the same loudness. So our ear is not that sensitive to lower and very higher frequency. You know, we have perfect 1 to 2 kilohertz, but the other frequency are dropping. So it's like they use a step sinus sweep to measure the transfer function of the human ear. So the first frequency weighting function was born. Until this point, someone asked, but have you tried this with a higher anchor point, maybe at 50 decibel? No, but well, we can do this. So we set 1 kilohertz at higher level, 50 decibel about, and then compare it, and make everything as loud as this 1 kilohertz 50. And another curve appears. It was a little bit flatter, okay? Oh, suddenly we have two different curves for different basic loudness, okay? And another time someone asked, and have you tried even louder levels, like maybe 80, 90 decibel? Okay, we can repeat it again one more time, and again we do this, and we get a third curve. Maybe we should show this here in a diagram. We have different curves depending on how loud the total level is. And there's a big difference. It's not just 2 or 3 decibel, there's 10, 20, 30 decibel difference depending on the level. For soft tones was A weighting, for middle tones was B weighting, and for louder tones C weighting. And even for really loud tones, or almost pain in the ear, was a D curve, which looks completely different again. In practice, this is a disaster. You can't work with that. Just imagine you have a run-up of an engine and start with really soft tones, and then it gets loud. According to these files, you means in the beginning you use an A weighting, and suddenly you would switch over from now we have 50 decibel, we switch to B level, the B weighting, and then we switch to C level. And you will get in the run-up, suddenly it's jumped from 10 or 20 decibel up. You will say, oh, what's happening up there? Now we choose another weighting function there. You can't understand this. You want to have one weighting for the full measurement. So we have to simplify it. Let's say, okay, B is something just in the middle, so we can skip this. We have A weighting for soft tones and C weighting for loud tones, and D is so out of range, it's not important, okay? So in practice, people use A and C weighting. But still we have the problem, if I have the application cars, there's a car with a small engine, you should use maybe A weighting, but there's also a power sports car which has to use C weighting. And then you can't compare, because the differences between A and C weighting are tremendous, 20, 30 decibel. You can't never compare A weighting with analysis with C weighting. So if you want to compare those cars, it should have the same analysis. So the companies decide for which application, which weighting has to be used always. And if the companies can choose what kind of weighting they should use for their application, they pick the weighting which gives you the lowest level. So A weighting rules the world. So you make a mistake if I use dBA weighting over noise which is higher than 40 decibel. Well, 40 decibel is really a soft tone. But if I set it to dBA, I always make the same mistake on all the measurements, and at least I can compare. Another thing is, probably you're not measuring constant sinus tones. You are measuring noises for machines. So how do these analyses deal if they are not just one tone, if there are 2 or 3 tones in there, or if it's a wide spectrum of noise at the same time? Another thing is, if the tone is not constant, no, it's changing over time. Let's start with that one. So here I got 4 different noises. Let's listen to the first one. And the second one. Okay. Third one is very loud now. And the fourth one. Okay. And back to the first one. Okay. Different noises, different levels. Let's check how big the level is. I use now level versus time again, and loudness versus time, and compare it side by side. Here on top we see level versus time, and quite amazing is we always reach 81 decibel. 81, all 4 sounds have 81 decibel as a max level. If I bring them together, you can see all these noises reach 81, but after a while they drop. The first noise was just 20 milliseconds long, the second one 40 milliseconds, 160 milliseconds and 250 milliseconds. So it stays longer at the level, but the level was always exactly the same height. The loudness looks different. As you can see here, the loudness creates different values. That's because the loudness analysis take care of the response time of the human ear to new noises. If there's a long signal, it will rise over time until it reaches a maximum level. But if the signal is short, it will not reach the highest value. It will drop already before it had reached the complete value. The ear needs some time to get stimulated by a certain tone. And that is how people hear noises. So if you're working on short noises, like a door closing, buck, very short noise, then a level in dBA, it's not a good friend to say how loud it appears to you. Because the total level is not that important to your human perception. It's more how long the tone stays, is buck or bang. Yeah? It has more effect on the perception. So in this case, I recommend to use the loudness analysis for your target line settings. I have another example, two noises here, and this time I will calculate an FFT versus time, level versus time, and loudness versus time again, and compare it. We play back the first one. Okay, and compare with the second one. Okay, stop. The second one appears louder, which is quite interesting because it is exactly the same measurements. All I did, I just rewinded and played backwards, okay? It's exactly the same measurement, but otherwise around, what you can see here in the timeline. The FFT shows you there's a ping noise and it gets softer. This time it's whoop, getting louder and louder. For the level, that doesn't make any difference because you say 77 decibel if you play forward and 77.6 decibel if you play backward, of course. But for us, the loudness say, if it suddenly appears, we can't adapt so far. The response is too low from our human here, so we only reached about 30.8. But if it's coming up, we can reach 40. It's much higher for us if it comes this way. This effect is really clever. If you have two noises, maybe an injector and then the valve, it's clever to have first a loud noise because we will not hear that, and then the softer noise afterwards. Otherwise, around it appears to be louder if you have the chance. Keep this effect in mind because almost every noise, like an engine car, make cut, 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 cut. And every cut again creates a new appearance, a new filter. And your human is not that sensitive as level will show you. The loudness will help you to evaluate how badly really it appears to human perception. Okay, next topic is the masking effect. The dBA weighting curve has been created by playing just one sinus tone in comparison to other sinus tone at different frequencies. But what happens to human hearing if we play two tones at the same time? That has been not covered by the dBA weighting development. We can do this now and see if there is an effect and how big it is. I have three different noises here, and this time we'll use FFT, so it's a frequency analysis, and specific loudness, which means we have a frequency analysis for the loudness, and calculate. So I have three different noises here. What you see is there's a narrow band noise with a center frequency of 1 kilohertz, something like this, huh? And I add a signal of a sinus. In the first example at 700 hertz, so it's below the main noise. Here I added exactly at 1 kilohertz and here at 1400 hertz. So the sinus tone is softer than the main noise, but it's on different distances to the main noise. So let's check what we hear. First example. There's this random noise and you hear this boot, boot, it's getting louder, softer, louder, softer. Okay, it's clear to hear. Go to the second example. And it's gone. You're unable to hear the sinus tone. It's completely gone. It's masked. A human cannot hear that. Go to the third example. Very tiny. It's just there. I would not say it's getting louder. It's just recognizable that there is a tiny beat, beat, beat. Okay. What we see now in the level analysis. First is 77 decibel. The second one is 77 decibel. And the third one is also 77 decibel. Always the same, it doesn't matter. Because the level analysis always just take the energy and put it together. Just add it, okay? The third one is only a tenth of a decibel higher because the sinus tone gets closer to be at 2 kilohertz where the A weighting pitches a little bit up. If we look at the loudness analysis, we see these descending staircases. This is a nice visualization of the masking effect as it occurs on human hearing. Tones that are close together inside of a Bach scale cannot be separated. They mask each other. What we see here in the first example, when there's this doot, doot, doot tone here, we can see there's also energy here. In the middle, it's completely gone. And on the highest frequency here, there's this tiny spot where you see there is a little bit, but doesn't affect the total level. And so the values are different. Here we can hear it, 45 zone. Here it's masked, so it drops to 33. And here it's a little bit higher, 35 decibel. That is because the loudness analysis covers the masking effect of the human hearing. So this is a big difference in the behavior of these two analyses. If there's one frequency, it's fine. But if the second frequency coming close to the first one, the level analysis will add it to the total level. But people will not hear the second frequency if it's that close. So we ignore it, we can't hear, we don't care. And that's why the loudness analysis also ignore the second frequency. So the loudness analysis cover this masking effect perfectly. Now let's have a look at the main idea of the dBA weighting. We play sinus tones and listen how loud it appears to you. Okay, second one. Okay, remember, 4. Soft, okay, 5. And the 8. Okay, got this? For me, there are some differences how loud they appear to us. Let's check what the analysis would say to us. So all the sinus tone, we analyze by FFT average and specific loudness to see the frequency. We can see the different sinus tones here, and quite interesting is the dBA level is always exactly the same, 96, 96, 96, every time 96. And this is a little bit strange because this is the main idea of the dBA weighting, to work perfectly on constant sinus tone. Why there are these differences? The difficulty in the early time was they don't have digital measurement equipment. If you want to apply a frequency weighting curve to your measurement, you have to build it as a hardware. That means you have to combine conductors and capacitors in a certain way to apply weighting curves. So the analog signal passes this device, this combination, conductors, capacitors, and it will be filtered on the fly on the next way. And you don't have all the freedom if you build a device like that. It's really great that they made it to have an A weighting curve like this, but they cannot adapt all the small effect that you have about 4 or 5 kilohertz. We have a resonance effect here. It goes up and down for a short while and then it goes ahead straight. But it was not possible to do it, so they flattened it out and say this is the A weighting curve, but there was no other way. And it was set as a standard and of course has been copied to all the new techniques that follows. Last but not least, I want to show the difference in the time resolution of these two analyses. And this is quite amazing. For the level there are some settings like slow and fast, impulse. We start by listening to real measurements, a rattle. Yeah, you hear this prominent. Okay, yeah. And check what the analysis will do. We select this measurement and we have a level versus time analysis and a loudness analysis. Here below I can see all these rattle noises are directly displayed in the loudness analysis. And here in level it's completely flattened out. You hardly see any difference here. It doesn't matter if I scale it bigger here, it's just flat out because yes, it's too slow. What I used here as an analysis setup is time weighting slow. It's 1 second, of course, there's so much action in an average, this effect is just gone. Okay, so we change it and say, please use a fast analysis, that means 125 milliseconds averaging time, and recalc, and see it's getting better. So if it's really loud pack noise, here you see some effects, but it always has this slow down effect, which is not that what we hear. The reason for this averaging behavior of the level analysis also comes from the very beginning, when everything was analyzed in an analog way. If you have the needle showing on the display how loud your level is, you can't read it, it's too fast. So you have to calm it down by adding conductors and capacitors, so it moves just like this. It's the only way to get any value down. So the trick for you today, if you have digital technique, is to change the values. Here in ArtemiS you can select manually and can set the time constant you like to average the time. And human hearing perception can have a resolution of 2 milliseconds. So that is what we place in the level analysis, and then I recalc again. And now you see, if I play back here, you see all these noise can be seen now in the level analysis also. That works because we have a wide spectrum noise. Is always moving on all the frequencies at the same time, so it's moving up and down, everything. But if we have another example here where it's just in one tone, that will be squeal. Listen first. Okay. What you hear is... Let's see how it looks like if we analyze it. Like before. In the loudness. Tick, 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 tick. Everything can be seen here. But you can't see it in the slow evaluation. But we've learned a little bit. We can go even for manual on 2 milliseconds. So we pimp our analysis to be faster. It's still not in there because it's just a small tone. In comparison to the full spectrum, it doesn't matter in the full energy. Loudness analysis does, because if just one tone, it's evaluated as a bigger effect, the full bar gets up, and so it's in there even in the overall loudness. Well, this was a lot of information. I tried to sum it up. First big difference is the scaling. Level is scaled in decibels, so it's a logarithmic scaling, while loudness has a linear scaling. That means double the value means double as loud. It makes it easier to communicate. Second, the frequency scaling. People have a different frequency scaling depending on the total level. With a level analysis, we always use the same frequency weighting and we don't care about how loud it actually is by only using dBA weighting. It's simple, but almost the time wrong. Loudness, there is no setting A, B, C, D weighting, nothing like this, because this is integrated in the analysis. So it's automatically applied the right weighting function of the human hearing in the analysis. It makes it easier. Third, the level of detail of the transfer function of the human ear. Level analysis, especially the A weighting, is almost a flat curve going up and down like this, but the small details around some resonances here at our ear are not covered. But the loudness analysis does cover these effects, so it's more precise at this point. The next big difference is the masking effect. If there's one tone, another tone appears, we people do not hear the other tone, we ignore it. The level analysis add it. So it's a completely different behavior. Ignore, adding. It causes a lot of misunderstanding why this is louder now according to the analysis, but it doesn't seem to be louder because this behavior is not like human people do. But masking effect is covered in the loudness analysis. The last thing is the time resolution. Our human ear needs some time to adapt to a new wave that's coming in. So that there's a time response. This is covered in the loudness analysis, but not in the level analysis. On the other side is the time resolution on the fly is always averaged in level analysis, while loudness automatically use the time resolution of the human behavior. It's about 2 milliseconds. So it adapts exactly. If I hear 2 ticks, then I see 2 ticks in the loudness, and it's not averaging to almost nothing like level does. Actually, it's very difficult for me to find a reason why to use still dBA level these days. Level works great if I want to examine the damage of the human ear caused by some surrounding noise. 80 decibel on 3 hours damage my eardrum in that way. It works perfectly because the level describes the energy that attacks my human hearing. But if I want to know how loud this noise appears to a human being, then I always use loudness. I hope I could explain the differences in a very easy way. If you like this tutorial, and I think you do because you're up to the end, then please let me know. Actually, I know some more very powerful analyses which work much better than the usual FFT analysis, which in my opinion is used way too often. Stay tuned, you can learn a lot.